Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Well, it's already 2 minutes from 1 o'clock, so let's start. Today we'll talk about the residence and work permit option for foreign students in Spain. We will also have a brief explanation about the special tax regime, which my colleague Meritxell, she's also here with us. She's a tax lawyer. Okay, from those ones that they don't know us, we are AGM Abogados. We are a law firm that we are established in the whole national country. We have offices in Barcelona, in Madrid, and in Sabadell. We also have an office in Paris. We are the only national Spanish firm with a physical office in the city of Paris. We are a multidisciplinary law firm, so it means that we have all the law branches within the firm. In my case, I'm in the immigration law department, so that's why I will be explaining the resident and work permission options. And just after, my colleague will explain the special tax regime, as explained before. So let's start about, well, this. We are Mark and Rachel, as explained before. Here you will see the content of this webinar. At the beginning, we will try to analyze and explain the current situation of foreign students in Spain. This is how many students are at the moment living here in the Spanish territory, and we will also see a world map of nationalities. This is quite important in order to understand the reality of the immigration laws, not only for students, but also for the work permission options. Just after, we will try to explain the main work permit options for foreign students who are going to complete their courses this year or the next coming month. And following, we have decided to focus on how to manage. So we will be explaining some key information about how to deal with interviews with human resources companies. So when you attend to interviews, you could analyze your profile, analyze the job offer that they are offering you, and so determine the suitable work permit option. Following, we will try to explain the different type of companies recruitment in Spain, which is also important to analyze the suitable work permit options. And finally, as said before, we have a key information about the special tax regime. So let's start about the information of how is the situation of foreign students in Spain up to date. At the moment, comparing to the rest of European countries, we see that Spain is one of the preferable countries, which means that most of the foreign students who are intended to come to European Union to study choose Spain, maybe for the food, for the weather, for whatever, but Spain is on the top of the list. And you can see in the presentation that leaving aside the pandemic years, the year by year, the numbers of students in Spain is increased. So that's quite important to know, because when we explain about the work permissions, we could understand why the Spanish government is trying to regulate and establish new type of work permissions. So as I said before, here you can see a world map by nationalities. As you see, most of the nationalities in Spain are from the United States, China, and Latin America, which means that all of them will require a work permission to work in Spain. And in some cases, from those from Latin America, it's also interesting to achieve a work permission, because after 2 years, they will be allowed to apply for the Spanish citizenship. So this graphic, this screen that you see here is the world map by students between 25 and 30 years old, because we consider that most of you will be within this gap age. So as I said before, during the past years, the Spanish government has been regulating new type of work permissions, and that's because the increasement of the students has also been higher. So now we will try to provide you some key information. So you have the initial overview of the work permissions option in Spain when you decide to start doing interviews with human resources department in Spain. So as you see here, in this session, we will talk about the following work permissions. The first one is known as the highly qualified work permit, okay? Following, we will talk about the work internship permit, the job seeker permit, Cuantagena, and finally, we will give some information about one residence permit that is going to be approved the following month in Spain, which is for digital nomads. So it means that someone from another country can come to Spain to work remotely and apply for a work permission. So now we will try to explain some of the key questions or information, sorry, to know or to understand every type of work permission. So the first one is the highly qualified work permit, okay? If most of you are studying in Spain, a master or a doctorate, a PhD, maybe probably you will be suiting up with this type of work permit, okay? It applies to professionals with academic degree and professional experience, 3 years for technicians and 5 years for directors, for positions that implies more responsibility, which means that you are leading a team or you are leading the company. So the main requirements to access to this type of work permit is first to have a work contract, which means that the company must offer you a work contract with the duration of the permit is linked to the duration of the work contract, which means that if they are offering you 1 year, the work permit will be limited for 1 year. But if there is a non-temporary work contract, then the permit will be issued for 2 years, and you will be renewing the permit every 2 years. According to the salary, it's quite important, that requirement, because if you want to be able to obtain this type of work permit, at least the company will have to offer you the amount of 41,000 euros per year. This is gross salary for technicians, which means that technician implies every type of work permit, as for example, if you have done degree of law or engineering, every type of job position that requires certain functions of experience or experience in terms of studies, okay? So if you are going to be a director, the amount of salary will have to achieve at least 55,000 euros per year. But in that case, there are two situations where the salary can be reduced. So if you are minor of 30 years old, then they can offer you the amount of 31,000 euros per year, and you will be also suitable for this type of permit. At the same time, depending on the company who is hiring you, there are also another situations where the salary can be reduced. This is companies known as SME, which are in Spanish PYME. When there is a PYME, which is a company with less than 250 employees, and this company is interest for the Spanish economy, or because they are within a market which is quite interest for the Spanish government, as for example startups or energy companies. These sort of companies that for the sector or for the future of the country is quite interesting, because it will create not only employment, but also it will imply that the government is changing according to the European laws and according to the European scope, which are to innovative all type of markets. So we have said that it's important to know that you have a work contract, that the salary must achieve the amounts that I have said before, and that the job profile is according to what is known as qualification, which is for technicians that you at least have 3 years of experience in that job position, okay? But in case that you have a university degree or a master degree in a university that is well recognized by the Spanish government, you can also access, even if you don't have experience in that job position. Which universities or business schools are well recognized? Well, mostly in Spain, all the universities that are public universities or even private universities, such as ESADE, IESE, EADA, all this type of university can be suited up with this type of permit. Okay. In any case, if your university or your degree can be considered as well recognized, you can also contact us and we can confirm that to you. But just to know that if you don't have experience, you can also demonstrate that part of the job profile by demonstrating your university degree or master. As I said before, it's also important to know which type of hiring company will be, because certain percentage of salary will be reduced. So what I pretend is that at least you can identify all these requirements, and when you identify all the requirements, you can contact to your lawyer or to your legal assistant, and then proceed with the work permission. But it's easy if you can identify that requirements before, because like this we can do a checklist. Okay. With that type of work permit, the process is quite fast. Okay, in 20 working days you can obtain the work permit. It's important to know that you have to submit the file before the expiration of your student permit. So if now you are doing interviews and they want to hire you just after completing your studies, just remember that you need to submit it before the expiration of your TA card. Okay, if not, if you are not on time to do it, you will have to find another solution, which is to apply for the job seeker visa that we are going to explain later. Finally, this type of work permit is linked to the hiring company, which means that once the permit is approved, you will be allowed to work with that company. But if you change or you decide to go and work for another company, for another entity, you will have to process a new type of work permit. Now we'll talk about the work internship permit. Okay, this is another permit that applies for foreigners who have obtained a higher university degree in Spain, but also if you have obtained it in your home country, you can also be allowed to apply for this type of work permit. But in that case, it requires that at least you have finished that university degree or master within the past, within the previous 2 years. So if that's the case, if you have finished a course which is not more of 2 years before, you can access to this type of work permit. Despite the name of internship, this is just a type of work contract within the labor legislation in Spain, but you will be considered as an employee. This type of work permit is thought for those persons who just end up studying in Spain, that they don't have sufficient experience for the job position because they have the theoretical part, but they don't have the practical part. So companies would like to hire you, but they cannot put you in a position which requires a previous practical experience. So this is the type of permit for that situation. It's limited for 1 year, the work contract, and the job position must be linked to your studies. Why? Because, as I said, the idea is to give you the formation, give you the, this part of the studies that you haven't done, which is the practical one. The process is also quite fast. It's 30 working days. In Barcelona, it's even less. You can obtain the residence permit in 1-2 weeks. And this permit is also linked to the hiring company, which means that during this year, you can only work for them. But after completing this year, you can change the permit, for example, to the high qualified work permit or to another one that is the Cuantagena that we are also going to explain now. Family members can also obtain a work permit if they were dependents of the employee when they were as a student. And finally, remember that it requires to submit the file before your student permit expires. So the third one is the job seeker permit. Maybe or probably you will have heard this permit before from university. This is considered like an extension of your student permit. It does not allow you to work, okay? It allows you to obtain a residence permission in order to look for a job or in order to start a business project. So it means that once you find a job offer, you will have to change this type of permit to another one, which will be the highly qualified or the work internship permit. In that case, you can submit the job seeker permit within the previous 60 days of your expiration of the student permit or until 90 days after. So let's imagine that you are interviewing with multiple companies in Spain. You are not secure if that hiring will be before or after your expiration of your student card. In that case, you can first apply for the job seeker permit. So at least you know that from that situation, from that legal status, you can also access to the work permit option. And finally, we'll talk about the Cuantagena. Okay, the Cuantagena is the general work permit associated for employees in the general immigration law in Spain. You can convert your student permit to Cuantagena work permit if you achieve the 3 continuous years in Spain as a student. So imagine that you have completed your degree in Spain, you have done the 4 years in Spain, then you can access to that type of permit. The only requirement, or at least the most important one, is to have a job offer or at least a work contract of 1 year. Okay, the job position does not require to be linked to your studies or does not require a certain amount of salary. Neither the job functions does not require you to demonstrate previous work experience, but you have to know that this type of permit can take between 3 months until 6 months to be solved. So despite you might see that it's quite benefit for you in terms of requirements, finally, as a lawyers, we don't choose that option because it will imply that the companies will have to wait at least 6 months until they can't hire you, and then you have to wait 6 months until start working. So that's why it's not really interesting if the hiring is to start as soon as possible. And finally, as I said before, digital nomad work permit will be approved during this coming year. Okay, we don't know if it will be next month or maybe at the end of the year, but you have here the information. Our idea is that at least you know that it will be approved. So if you have an idea to live in Spain and work remotely from another foreign country, this option will be real during this year 2022. You can either access to this type of permit if you are a graduate or if you have previous experience of 3 years. So more or less the requirements of accessing of this type of permit will be as a highly qualified. The difference is that the company will not be located in Spain. The company will be in a foreign country. Okay. So now that we have explained the main work permits option in Spain, we will try to give you the quick questions that you have to ask yourself every time you go to a job interview. So the first thing is to identify your candidate professional profile, okay? But also your legal status. So remember that if my student permit is going to expire, remember that before that, if I don't have sufficient time, I will have to apply for the job seeker visa, okay? So according to the professional profile, we can say that there are the following type of professional profile: the internship one, the junior one, the senior, and the manager. Okay. If you are going to be a senior or a manager profile, probably the suitable, or for sure the suitable work permit will be the highly qualified work permit. Okay. Why? Because it requires certain responsibility, decision making, and leading a team or a project. So I said before that it requires at least 3 years of experience, but if you are graduate from a well-known recognized university, you can also access to that type of work permit, even if you don't have the previous work experience. If the hiring is for a junior profile, okay, we will go with the work internship permit, as I said before. Why? Because you have the experience of having a diploma, but you haven't worked for that position before. So it means that probably within the structure of the company will be a junior profile. The functions will be according to that profile, and then as I said before, we will have to go to the work internship permit. And finally, I would like to point on the internship profile. This is if the company doesn't want to hire you, what they want is to do a university agreement with you. Remember that this is not a work permit. This is linked with your studies, and then you will have to maintain your student status if you want to do the agreement, unless the agreement that you are doing with the company is the main activity of your student studies in Spain. In that case, there is another type of permit option, okay, that is known as internship agreement work permit. At the end, you won't be considered an employee, okay? So it's not really benefit for you. in my opinion, I will try to go through the work internship permit or the highly qualified, because by acceding to this internship agreement work permit, you will not be doing anything different from what you can do as a student. So said before, it's also important to identify the recruitment company. So first, as said, identify your candidate profile. If I am a senior, if I am a junior, and now we have to identify the type of hiring company. If the company is a large company, which is considered as more than 250 employees, or if it's a PYME company, okay. Why? Because, for example, in the large company, if there is a large company that wants to hire you for the highly qualified work permit, it won't be necessary to demonstrate that you have complete a university degree. So the process will be quite fast. The same happens with the PYME companies. In that case, additional to the diploma requirement, there are certain separate percentage of the salary that will be reduced. As I said before, for technicians will be 31,000 euros, and for directors will be also applying the percentage mentioned before. Okay, in order you to identify what is an interest PYME for Spain, we have divided into the first one, those companies that are within a strategic sector. This is companies with innovative or IT component. We have mentioned some examples here: IT, big data, softwares, robotic, energy, mobility, startups. If there is a company that are with this definition, with innovative or IT company, it's interesting that you could identify that. So your salary will be reduced and you will be suitable for the highly qualified. The same happens if the company is considered as general interest for the Spanish economy. This is if the company have a high socio-economic impact on the region or the country. For example, if the company is established in a little town or a small city, it's not the same the impact that that company will have by hiring you or the projects that if the company is established in Madrid or Barcelona. In any case, we pretend you to give the key information. We understand that it's quite hard later to identify if it's suitable with one or another type of PYME company, but here you have the main information. In any case, when we identify the type of PYME company, we have to apply for a report against the Spanish Economy Ministry. And if this report is favorable, which means that Spain gives the approval of being considered within the strategic sector or general interest, we can start processing your work permit as highly qualified professional. And finally, you have to analyze the job offer, okay, which means the salary and the job position. For the salary, you have to ask yourself also 3 questions. If I have a university degree completed, how old I am, and what type of hiring company is the one that I have in front of me. Why? Because depending on that answers, you will be choosing the highly qualified or you will be choosing the work internship permit. For example, you have here some examples that you can find yourself when doing interviews. I have a university degree completed, plus I am younger than 30 years old. Then I can be suitable for the highly qualified if the offer is 31,000 euros. Okay. But if I am older than 30 years old, and the company that is hiring me is also considered a PYME with strategic or general interest, also the salary can be reduced 30,000 euros per year. Okay, but in the case that the salary is not achieving that amount, that it means that if the salary does not achieve an amount of 31,000 euros, I will have to go through the work internship permit. Okay, the same happens with the director position. Okay, you have here the examples, so you can follow them to see if it suits with one of your situations. But mainly our idea is that you could identify the job offer, which means the salary and job position, the type of recruitment company, okay, and your profile. If you can identify that information, it will be quite easy to choose the work permit that suits more with you. And now I will have to well, this is the same that I said before. Okay, if you are going to be hired as highly qualified, this is because you have some sort of responsibility in the functions that you will lead. But if not, if you don't have previous work experience, it will be the internship permit. Okay. And finally, as I said before, the Cuantagena does not require you experience or a diploma, but remember that this type of permit it will delay you until being allowed to start working in Spain. So with that, I will finish the immigration part. I hope that we have helped you to provide you some key questions from the immigration point of view. We will answering your queries later after the presentation. And now my colleague Marichel will talk about the special tax regime.
Thank you, Mark, and hello everybody. As mentioned, I will talk to you about the special tax regime for workers posted to Spain, commonly known as the Beckham law or the impatriate regime. The purpose of this special tax regime is to support initiatives, talent recruitment by the Spanish companies, and the end is to attract qualified workers to come and live to Spain through taxation. Please note that we will explain the current regime, although it's expected to be modified during this year. The regime is applicable to individuals who acquire their tax residence in Spain as a result to a move into Spanish territory. As we will see, the reason may be due to a contract for a Spanish company, or the acquisition of the status of director in a Spanish company. So students may not be able to apply this tax regime if they have not moved to Spain because of a hiring of a Spanish contract of a Spanish company. This implies that for this special tax regime to apply, it's necessary to effectively move to Spanish territory and work from here, and also to acquire tax residence in Spain. We will now analyze the concept of tax residence in Spain. According to the provisions of the Personal Income Tax Act, a person becomes tax resident in Spain if he or she spends more than 183 days per calendar year, or if he or she has the center of economic and personal interests in Spain. However, there is also a presumption, which is that in the absence of proof of contrary, the state of tax residence will be Spain, in case that the non-legally separated spouse with children lives in this country. In the event of a conflict of tax residence, it means that two countries assume that a and a special taxpayer is resident in their country, the provisions of the double taxation treaties will apply. It's important to say also that the taxpayers opting for the Beckham law can apply for a certificate of tax residence in Spain. On the other hand, the option for the application of the regime must be exercised within the 6 months after the posting to Spain and the commencement of the activity as stated in the registration social security. Although it's addressed to persons who acquire the status as a tax resident in Spain, the consequence of applying this regime is that they will be treated for tax purposes as non-residents. Once granted, the tax administration will issue a document that could be delivered to the company so that they can apply retentions as a non-resident. This special taxation will be applied on the year of the posting to Spain and the following 5 tax periods. It's possible to renounce to this regime, however, it will not be possible to apply for it again. And also, it's important to bear in mind that if the requirements are no longer met, the taxpayer will be excluded from this regime. And however, it's important to bear in mind that the change of employer of that one that brings you to Spanish territory will not be considered as a cause of exclusion. In order to be eligible for the application of the Beckham law, the following conditions must be met. First of all, the person must not have been tax resident in Spain in the previous 10 tax periods from the relocation. The second requirement is that the posting must be due to a contract in Spain. This employment relationship can be ordinary, special, or statutory, doesn't mind, and maybe due to a post ordered by the employer. But in this case, there should be a letter of posting. If this requirement is met, it's important to bear in mind that there must be a causal relationship between the employment contract and the posting of the worker. It means that the existence of a prolonged period between the posting and the start of the employment relationship may be an indication that the causal link does not exist, so the requirements will not be met. Also, this regime does not apply to special employment relationship for professional athletes since the 1st of January of 2015. The other option would be that the posting takes place because of the acquisition of the condition of a director in a Spanish entity. However, in this case, the applicant cannot have a shareholding of more than 25%. It means that this cannot be an entity related to the taxpayer. The last requirement is that the taxpayer does not obtain income that would be qualified as obtained through a permanent establishment located in Spain. It means that this person cannot have an activity on his behalf in this territory. The concession of the regime involves the application of the flat rate of 24% up to 600,000 euros. On the excess, it means 600,000 euros onwards, it will apply the tax rate of 47%. The calculation is per calendar year. Please note that in this case, if you were a tax resident in Spain, the taxation would be between 48% or 50%, depending on the autonomous community in which you live. Remuneration also can exceed the 600,000 euros, whether in cash, in kind, fixed or variable. This regime, as you can note, benefits very high incomes, and when reviewing the possibility of its application, the projection in the following years should be analyzed, because maybe at the time of the application, the difference between being taxed on the regular regime or to the special tax regime is not significant. However, it could be the case that next year or in 2 years, it's yet significant. And then it will not be possible to apply for this regime, because as we already said, we only have 6 months since the posting. So this is something that should be taken into account. For the application of the regime also, the posting must currently be made, and the work must actually been carried out in Spain. Therefore, if in the event that a company hires a person that works from his home, from another country, or from the residence country, but that it's different, the conditions for the Beckham law would not be fulfilled. It's important to remind that the application of the regime will only be for the person that applied and that fulfills the requirement. It means that if an entire family is relocated, it only will apply to the person who is granted the regime. So the rest of the family can be taxed as a resident in Spain, with the difference in terms of tax obligation that it would imply. For example, the acquisition of the tax residence in Spain entails the obligation to pay taxes for personal income tax purposes at a progressive tax rate and for the income that you receive worldwide. Also, the person will be obliged to declare all the goods abroad, which would be declared through Form 720, and which is a tax form that details the taxpayers' goods abroad. That could be bank accounts, real estate, cryptocurrencies, or shares that exceed for each category of the 50,000 euros. And also, another obligation would be to fill the wealth tax return for personal obligation. It means for all the goods or rights that they have abroad. Taxpayers who apply for the Beckham law, however, will be taxed according to the non-resident tax rules for the salaries obtained worldwide, and for the other incomes they obtain, only for the ones obtained in Spain, and also at a fixed rate of the 24%. Also, they will not have the obligation to fulfill Form 720 for declaring all the goods abroad, and the wealth tax will be only submitted for real obligation, which means only for the goods that are in Spain. As I said at the beginning, this regime may change this year with modifications in favor of the taxpayer, such as the term of applying can be increased. It may apply to all the family members, not just to the applicant that fulfills the requirements, but we will need to keep informed, because by now the current regime is the one that we explained. And this is the end of our brief description for the special tax regime for employees posted to Spain. And if you have any questions about anything explained in the webinar, we will be happy to answer it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I will try to read all the questions that you have right here, and in the case that if is an immigration question, it will be me who will be answering, and the other case it will be Meritxell. So notice that if we see that there are personal questions, I will try to invite you to email us. Okay, you have also our emails in the presentation at the beginning. You have our emails there, and you can email us and we can answer your questions if they are more specific. So the first one says that I'm currently having a student visa. I have an offer for internship in Spain. My visa expires in June, and my internship will be from July until December. Do I need to get a new student visa, or I need and internship 1. If the internships are linked to a student agreement, you have to keep with the student status, okay? But if they are offering you a work contract, then you have to change, you have to convert your permit until through a work permit, which the work internship permit mentioned before. The following one says, does the 31K counts for both fixed and variable salary? No, the 31K counts only for fixed salary, okay? So it means that at least with fixed salary, you have to achieve that amount. If you have variable salary apart, it won't be counted for achieving the qualification. The following one says, if the salary is less than the one stated for the highly qualified permit, can I still apply, or does it have to meet all the requirements? You have to fill all the requirements, which means if you don't have the salary requirement, you have to go through the work internship permit, or you can go to the Cuantagena if you have 3 years in Spain as a student. If not, it's there are no options. Okay, sorry for that. And the following one says, if I have studied for 4 months in Barcelona, I don't know which type of MS program is, and I don't have a TNE, does the work internship permit still apply? Okay, remember that the work internship permit applies to all foreigners that have end up studies in Spain or outside of Spain. Okay, if you have completed a university degree or a master outside of Spain, you can also be allowed to apply for this type of permit. Just remember that it requires to be a university course that you have complete at least prior 2 years before the submission of your work permit. So in that case, if that happens, you can go through the permit. The following one says, for the work internship permit, the hiring company only has to provide me with the working contract, or does hiring company have to go through additional process for me to receive work permit? So all type of work permits will require that the company sponsors you, okay, which means that you have to submit title deeds of the company. That also requires to sign some type of document form, which is the application form, and of course the work contract. But in any case, despite that the company is the sponsors one, the one that has the legal competence to apply for the work permit of a foreigner, this representation can be done by a third party, by a lawyer. So in case that happens, don't worry, because we can also take care of that. Can you please share the chairs of each services? Well, in that case, I invite you to email us, okay? Because depending on the case, depending on the work permit, will be one fees or another. How does one apply for a Cuantagena if we have done MBA for 2 years? You cannot apply for the Cuantagena if you don't have 3 years of stint in Spain, because it applies the Situación Nacional de Empleo, which means that in order to be able to achieve the work permit, we need to find to the labor market that no one within the labor market can do your work. If that happens, then you can go with the Cuantagena, but as I said before, it's not really recommended because it will delay your entrance in a company, and also if you don't have 3 years, it's quite hard to be suitable for this type of work permission. The following says 3 continuous years under student status. This will refer to the only undergraduate, grado universitario students, then correct? It applies to any type of study, which means that if you were here doing your school, okay, you can also access to this type of permit, but it will require you at least 3 years as a student in Spain. If that happens, you can also apply for the Cuantagena. The following one says, does the job seeker permit apply to PhD students with research visa also? Yeah, I mean, the job seeker permit applies to every type of university degree up from a bachelor. So if you have a a master or a PhD, and you demonstrate that you have completed them, you can access to the job seeker visa. Okay, so it also applies for PhD students. Following one says, can you speak more on the age requirement? You already said that the person who has to be between 18 and 30 years old. Well, I mentioned the 30 years old when I was talking about the salary requirements. Why? Because if you pretend to apply for the highly qualified work permit and you are under 30 years old, the salary requirement will be reduced, and then if the company is offering you less than 41,000 euros per year, but more than 31,000 euros per year, you can also be suitable for this type of work permit. That's why I indicate the age. In case of the internship, there are no requirement of age. If you demonstrate that you have completed a university degree within the 2 previous years, you can access to that type of permit. To apply for the job seeker visa, do I need to present it in Spain? Yes, you need to submit it in Spain. Additional to that, you have to submit it electronically. So yeah, you need to do it here in Spain. Okay. If your studies end up in Spain, but you are still a student in your home country, can you make an internship agreement, considering that we can establish an Erasmus Plus internship agreement? If you are enrolled in a course in Spain under a student status, okay, and in this program is allowing you to do a course outside of Spain, but you still be enrolled in the course, then yes, you can do the internships outside of Spain. But if that agreement is after completing your studies, then no, then you have to look for another type of permit. If you are going to work in another European Union country, you must apply for another type of work permit, because every country has its own laws and every country has its own type of work permit. If you have a permit in Spain, it won't allow you to work in another country. The company startup should apply for the report, or the employee can. The employee cannot do that. It has to be the company or a third party, as AGM, for example, can do that. What are the AGM fees? I said before, I will prefer to invite you to email us so we can study your case and give the fees according to the process. Will the years of studying visa be counted when I apply the long-term residency? For example, I have finished 4 years of study and 3 years of work permit. Yeah, there is a type of long-term residency, which is the UE long-term residency, that will count half of your student period. So if you have 4 years, it will count 2, and then you will have to achieve 3 more years in Spain with a resident permit in order to go and apply for the long-term in Spain. By work experience, does it also include part-time work experience or only full-time work experience? Doesn't matter. It applies for both. At the end, you have to demonstrate the work experience through your curriculum. So if that is according to your experience, you can demonstrate that. Of course, it will help if you submit also letters of work experience from the previous companies, okay, to hold your experience. Following one said, as student, it is possible to acquire a tax resident. This is for Marichel.
Yes, working permits and taxation are not the same. I mean, for tax purposes, the law foresees that you will be tax resident if you spend in this territory for 183 days. And also the other criteria is that you have here during your economic interest and personal interest. So if you are here, you can become a person taxed in Spain.
Thank you, Marcel. Following are also immigrations. One says, if my exam ended up in June, but my graduation ceremony is until October. Will the government consider me as a recent graduate starting from June or starting from October? The government will consider you as a recent graduate when you obtain the certificate of completion, okay, or certificate of having applied for the diploma. So if you can apply for the diploma in June, then you can also be considered a recent graduate. Can I apply for a highly qualified work permit for another European country? Then you have to go to another lawyer in that European country because every type of European country has its own laws. More or less, you will find that there will be the same type of permits, but one permit from Spain does not allow you to work outside, so you have to go and contact another lawyer, but in that country, okay, located in that country. Is a job seeker visa counted as part of your stay in Spain? That is the discount. Yeah, the job seeker visa counts as a resident, which means that it will count for the long term. It will count for the nationality. Okay. Despite that does not allow you to work, it counts as a resident status. Okay. And finally, for the job seeker permit, as the title means to be official, it is a bachelor degree in another country necessary to be. The job seeker visa does only applies for diplomas that you have completed in Spain and that are official. So you cannot use another type of diploma because see that this type of permit, the job seeker visa, requires to apply under the student status. So it's impossible to access to another type of status, and then not possible to show a foreign diploma. And finally, yeah, AGM will share the video and also the presentation with you. And if you have more doubts or you like to have our assistance for processing a job permit or also the special tax regime if applies in your case, we will be glad to help you. You have also our contacts at the beginning of the presentation, so feel free to mail us. Okay, and finally, the family members can go through the job seeker if they were also as dependents when they were studying. Okay. So thank you very much to everyone who has attended here. As I said before, you can email us and you have our contacts here. And good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.